Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
Today, we are listening to jail stories from 4 top ex-football hooligans. Very well known up and down the UK. They talk about what it's really like for a football hooligan serving time in prison, what day-to-day life consists of in jail, how they were treated by other inmates, fights they had inside. Let's jump straight in with our first casual football story. Mickey Francis, Manchester City. It turned out there were a lot of Mancs in Walton, some of whom I knew, like Steve Bryan, who I later went into business with. I had no trouble in there at all, partly because we had a little clique, and partly because of me being a big lad and the way I carry myself. If you are weak and you look weak, you can get murdered. There weren't that many smackheads in jail either. They cause a lot of bother inside, always pestering people. I suppose the good news was that the week after we were sent down, City were promoted, finishing second in Division 2. Another big day I missed out on. Jail is not as hard as it could be if you can get the things you want. If you have a strong character and put yourself about, you can get pretty much anything in jail. You can get milk, decent meat, all the good stuff. You don't have to get the shit. You can bag yourself a decent job. It can be harder for your family and friends. They think you're suffering in jail when really you're getting plenty of sleep, using the gym twice a day, reading, having a break. What more do you want? If you like going to the gym and eating, it is the best way to put on weight and get yourself fit. I came out as fit as fuck, like Raging Bull. Of course, it has its downside. You can't see your family. I was in Walton for about 12 weeks and then moved to Weymouth, a semi-open prison in Leyland, Lancashire, where I shared with Chris until we both got our own cells next door to each other. It was like going back to school. Each block is a T shape with an A house, B house and C house. I was on B house. It had 14 cells. You were allowed your own door key and could have a stereo in your room and your own television, which you could watch until 8 p.m. They would just lock the main wing door and we could have all the cells open, 20-odd men running wild, smuggling in dope for draw parties, everyone saving their biscuits and cakes from visits until Friday night, taking your shirts off, covering the lights to make the room go blue, playing music dead loud and having a rave right there on the wing. It was wild. One night we were in there and everyone was on the smoke. I got a bit dizzy after a few puffs because I don't smoke. They knew I'd do anything for a laugh, so one lad took a broomstick and said, "Bet you can't do this, Mickey. Get the brush, look at the light, walk round it, put it on the floor, jump over it 3 times and run down the corridor." So I get this brush, go round and round, jump over it, lose my bearing totally, hit every fucking wall, smash my head open, pouring blood and collapse on the floor. I pretend I have done myself in proper. I'm lying there and they all rush round me going, "Fucking hell, he's done in. I think he's dead." Just as they were about to call the screws, I jumped up and they ran for their lives. Weymouth was full of Mancs. There were a few queers about as well, although the gang rapes that you hear about in America are very rare over here. Some strange things do go on though, and I think the officers are aware of it and just let it happen. On that wing, the screws knew that Chris and I were pretty game, and if they looked like losing control, they would sometimes say to us, "Will you sort it out for us?" We would get extra privileges for keeping things sweet. If someone was playing up, being a cunt and ruining things for everyone else, they'd say, "If you weigh him in, Mike, don't weigh him in too badly. He needs a smacking." They can't do it themselves because they'd get sacked, so what they try to do is manipulate you. You have to be careful you aren't used. You can't do everything they say, give someone a slap, just because they don't like him. The thing is, they know what everyone is in for, and it always comes out in the end. People who are in for molesting kids and that sort of stuff aren't put on Rule 42, get weighed in and deserve it. Most prisons have their own little groups that run wings, but they are hard places to control, because once you get your feet too well in, you get moved out very quickly. What you have just listened to was Mickey France's story of doing time. Now let's listen to another well-respected top lad, Andy Nicholls of Everton. As he talks about his time inside, the following is his story. We were put in the cells for an hour, then got a meeting with our brief, who said he had lodged an immediate appeal for our release, on bail, as the magistrate should have asked for pre-sentence reports. It was a Friday, and he said that we might have to spend the weekend in jail, as Bruce was not prepared even to review his decision. That turned out to be the case, and an appeal date was set for the Monday. The prison officers were on industrial action and were not accepting any new inmates, so we had to be held in police custody in stations all over the place. We got split up, and me, Jock and Mick were put on a minibus with some police guards and were told that we were going to Melton Mowbray, a small market town near Leicester, famous for its pork pies. Personally, I'd never heard of it, but it was bound to be better than the Scrubs, the only prison which had agreed to take a few of the lads. A lot of the young ones got sent to a detention centre, which was not a kind option. 6 young Scousers and half of London's urchins wasn't my idea of a 4-star weekend break in the capital. We stopped at another police station on the way to Leicestershire, and the copper handcuffed me to a bloke that they brought out. It was dark by now, and this bloke was suited up, but he had long hair and a mad beard, so I thought he was a bit of an odd one. After about 10 minutes, this foul smell was making me retch, and for the next hour of the journey, I did well not to spew my guts up. I couldn't really make out who it was, and with this bloke next to me having a suit on, I thought that it must be a bloke behind us, who was a bit of a scruffy bastard. We pulled into Melton Mowbray police station, and they called out the names of me, Jock and Mick, which I was glad of, as it meant we'd be in there together. When we got inside the station, they took the cuffs off, and I looked at the bloke in the suit. He had a pair of football boots on his feet. He was a stinking tramp. The screws were pissing themselves, but I was in a right one, started itching all over. And they did let me have a shower when they stopped laughing. The nick was sound. We were looked after by traffic cops on overtime. It was a doddle, and we were given remand privileges, which meant we could send out for food, books, and other little luxuries we would not get in a proper nick. As it stood, a month in Melton was nothing short of a holiday. One night a lad was caught burgling a local house, and he got locked up with us. The occupants of the house were away on holiday, and he was caught red-handed with their television and video recorder. The busies set it up in the recreation room, took 50 pence out of all our wages, and we watched films on exhibits A and B every night. One night, they got us One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was fitting considering some of the crackpots locked up with us. It all went wrong when the solicitors representing us put in an appeal against the sentence after losing the first one regarding the judge not giving us pre-sentence reports. We could not believe that some of the lads were not happy with a month, but we all had to go with the flow, and after a week the second appeal was granted and we were released. We were gutted. The 3 of us were guilty and were happy where we were. The police were after an easy time, gave us no shit, and were a credit to their profession. I'm not sure if the authorities would see it that way, but to us they were sound, and I was honestly sorry to be released. We had only 2 weeks to do, and a retrial would last another 3 weeks, which was all money out of my pocket, as this time was to be at Suffolk Crown Court. Another thing playing on my mind was that at the end of it, if things went bad, there was nothing stopping a new judge giving us a longer sentence. It was a gamble, and one I would not have gone for, but some of those sentenced had done nothing, so I suppose it was important to them to clear their names. I just wish they could have left us where we were. The retrial did indeed last 3 weeks, and after a promising start, turned out to be a total waste of time. The judge was Gerard Butler, and he seemed much better than lovable old Magistrate Bruce. We had more witnesses, and the added bonus of no Regan, as he was locked up for the armed robbery. Regardless of all that, Judge Butler still thought we were all lying and was bluffed by the police. He waved the appeal off and gave us the same sentence. It was farcical, really, and a waste of a couple of £100,000. What pissed me off most were our briefs. The solicitors got us all barristers, as it was in Crown Court. I didn't like mine from the beginning of the trial. His name was Fletcher, and, as a keen follower of porridge, I thought that was a bad omen. He was a black bloke, and with his wig on, looked like a pint of Guinness, so that's what I called him. He didn't see the funny side. When we got the same sentence, Guinness said, "Well, it was worth a try. You've lost nothing." Lost nothing. Except another job, as 3 weeks off to attend court was not on according to my new boss, and 3 weeks' expense of living in London was a waste of the best part of £1,000. Also, the holiday camp that was Melton was a goner, as the prison officers had gone back to work, and we ended up getting sent to Brixton Jail. It was a bit on top, and we had loads of threats from all the cockneys, but nothing happened worthy of a mention. We were all put on the same wing, and after 10 days got released. That was the end of it for me, but I got roped in on the last chance appeal, which meant trying for a royal pardon. Some of the lads' parents spent a fortune trying to get it, and it was well publicised in the press and on TV. We even went live for a rough justice programme. I went for a nose and did an interview, which was played on national radio. To some people, it was important to clear their names for work and career opportunities. Personally, I was in it for some compensation, and so were some of the others, as everyone I knew had seen the Liverpool Echo and Daily Post, and had read I had been to prison. So, what use is a letter from the Queen's Secretary saying it was a mistake, or a miscarriage of justice? I was hardly going to go around the houses showing it my neighbours. I got sick of it in the end. All the meetings and phone calls were a load of bollocks to me, and we had done the jail. So in the end, I sacked the whole thing and let the others get on with it. To their credit, they never gave up, and a few won in the end. I never heard if my name was cleared, and definitely never got a fat cheque. So I wasn't arsed. But I was glad for a few of the lads who saved their jobs, or went on to become teachers and social workers. I still see a few of the remaining Everton 29, and like me, several are still bang at it. One of the lads, Mark Duval, was sadly killed. Another went missing and hasn't been seen for years. Regan was released after serving 11 years of the 18 he got for the armed robbery. A week after he came out, I met him for a beer, and we had it with Boro later that day in the battle on Scotty Road. Jail as an answer to football hooliganism? I don't think so. That was a legend, Andy Nicholls. I urge you to go and buy his book called Scally. It's still regarded as one of the best football hoolie books out there. I will leave a link in the description if you're interested in buying it. It really is highly recommended. Let's jump into another story. This time it's the turn of Chelsea headhunter Jason Marriner. Here we go. I was sitting in my sweatbox as it went to other courts to pick people up, and I could hear all the stories coming out about how this one and that one had been stitched up. Then it came on the news. The two notorious headhunters, Jason Marriner and Andy Frayne, have got 6 and 7 years, respectively, "Fucking hell, that's a liberty," someone in the van said. I burst out laughing because he didn't know I was on board. Then every time we passed Curry's or Dixon's there, I was on the 6 o'clock news, my face larger than life on the TV. The difference was that my remand was over. I was now a long-term prisoner, but even though I had been there for almost a year, I still had to see a doctor. He said he wanted to put me in the hospital wing for the night because the sentence was probably a lot for me to take in. I told him in no uncertain terms I wasn't going down that road. "If you think I'm going to hang myself over some judge giving me 6 years, you're off key. I've got plenty going for me outside, thank you very much. 6 years won't alter my life." So I signed a form to say I'd refuse to go on the hospital wing and made my way back to my own wing. 1-0 is a sore neck, a horrible old Victorian dump that should have been pulled down years ago. You're banged up almost 24/7, apart from getting out for your 3 meals a day. I've seen grown men buckle in there. It's that tough. In those days, it was the only jail still run by the Prison Officers Association, and that's why it was so far behind the times. The screws didn't want it to move forward because, let's face it, when you're banged up, they don't have to work. It was so bad that some prisoners actually preferred seg. As my mate Dave, an escapee, told the governor before he was sent down the block, "I'll get a phone call, a cell clean, a shower, and exercise every day, and that's 4 more things than I'd be getting on the landing." If 1-0 had a silver lining, it was, strangely enough, the amount of time you spent in your cell. In the prison system, Wandsworth is known as a bird killer because you know your daily routine, and so once you've had your meals and you're banged up again, it's another day done. But I always say, no matter which nick you're in and how tough it is, doing time all comes down to your frame of mind. If you can stay positive, all you care about is chipping away at your sentence. You get up and have your breakfast, then go back and do a little bit of this and some of that, and before you know it, lunch is being served. You follow the same routine in the afternoon and after tea. If you're lucky enough to have a radio, you might hear your favourite song or listen to a game. There's football on almost every day now, and that is a massive help, because when the full-time whistle goes, that is another day done. One thing you have to master quickly is how to deal with the kangas. You have to know how to work them because most of them have been doing the job for a long time, and whatever else you might think of them, they ain't fools. You're in Wandsworth, one of the hardest nicks, so you've got to graft them and get them on your side. And some of them weren't so bad. Like this old screw, Mr. Stewart, although his good points weren't immediately obvious. I remember the first words he spoke to me. "Canteen." Then when I got to the canteen, he was still at my shoulder. "Were you ready when I opened the door?" he asked. "Of course I was. You saw I was already on my feet, didn't you?" "Good," he said. "Because if you hadn't been ready, I'd have slammed the door shut on you, and you wouldn't have had canteen for another week." I just looked at him. "What? Do you really think I'm that bothered about getting hold of some poxy tuna and noodles?" He thought he had got me. You'd have been bothered all right because you wouldn't have been able to buy fags." I batted it right back to him. "I don't smoke." Give him his due, he was straight back in. "But you must buy fags like everyone else, even if it's just to serve them up to someone later for extra phone card." "No, I've got plenty of other tricks for that." I'd given him an answer for everything he had thrown at me. He liked that. He respected it. He enjoyed the cut and thrust. I will never forget the sight of Mr. Stewart on Christmas Eve when he came in, lagging drunk with this big nose stuck on his face. wearing joke dreadlocks. He marched up to my cell door. "Marriner!" he shouted. Instead of jumping out of my skin, I turned slowly to face him as I was reading my paper. I was as casual as you like. "What is it, Gov?" "You're a cunt," he screamed, and with that, he slammed the peephole shut. "Listen, prison is all mind games, and you love to play them. I've seen people fuming about him, and I had to tell them, no, he loves all that, but he's sweet. He's all right. Just play along with it. I never let him get under my skin. I remember one time he came up to me. "Marriner, have you got any phone cards?" I thought I'd have a bit of a joke with him. "What do you want one for? Can't you use the public phone?" "No, Gov, I haven't got one." And with that, he gave me one of his phone cards. Just like that. I'm telling you, he was all right for a screw. Don't get me wrong, there were some screws I hated. There was this one kangaroo I thought was okay until this day he showed his true colours. I was working on the hot plate, chatting away to two of my mates. Nearby there was this Geordie screw, a senior officer, but a right pisshead too. As we were talking, this kid, a smackhead, walked past and said to the screw, "Governor, I'm not being funny, but I've had 3 nights on the trot where I can't sleep because of savage toothache." The kangaroo wasn't interested. "You can't sleep because you're on the gear again and you're clucking," he said dismissively. The kid might have been lying, but at the end of the day, the screws are there to provide a service and look after your well-being. But none of that mattered to this mug. The kid was still standing there, complaining about his toothache. And he went on and on until the kangaroo snapped. "Fuck off! Who are you fucking talking to?" he bawled. "You can't talk to me like that," the kid said. "I can do what I want. Now fuck off before I smack you in the mouth and then you'll have no tooth." I could see it was never going to end there, and the moment the kid said something else, crack! The screw chinned him and the tray went flying. Another kangaroo saw this and he blew his whistle. The kid got nicked and put on a charge. Now he was down the karaoke while the screw got away scot-free. But then, they never go over on their own, do they? From then on, I saw that screw in a different light. He was a bully who used his position of authority to take liberties. Another important factor inside is keeping busy, and one of the best ways of keeping busy is to get a job. There are also the little extras that come your way when you're working. Even when I was on remand, I wanted to get one. You might have the best pad mate in the world, but you're bound to get on each other's nerves over a 23-hour bang-up. Try being in the same room as your wife for that long, 7 days a week. It wasn't easy to get a job. You had to apply for one, and most of the forms ended up in the bin. It's another thing the screws do to test you. With them, everything is always tomorrow or wait and see. One thing that might have worked in my favour was that I hadn't given them a lot of grief. Not like those short-tempered kids who are always going up to them and shouting, "You're a fucking prick." If you are a character and give them the old, "Yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir" routine, they might even get to like you. Some people might think I am a mug for doing that, but it makes life easier all round. In that vile gaff, that's what it's all about. It also helps if you're not on the Chinese rugs, because the kangas realise you're not going to be interested in contraband and serving up. As the job I wanted was on the hot plate, where I would come into contact with the whole wing, that was important to them. So after 3 or 4 months on remand, I got onto the hot plate, and the day after I was sentenced, I was straight back on it. I enjoyed the hot plate, the banter with the lads, the fact that I wouldn't be stuck in my cell, thinking about my sentence and all that had gone on. It also guaranteed you a shower and a daily phone call. Plus, you could clean your cell every day and wash the floor. Little things on the outside, but gold dust inside. And like any other job, there were plenty of other bonuses. You could nick trays of chickens to razor blade and also get your hands on those little reflective sheets we used as mirrors. That enabled me to look after my mates. Inside, proper people don't forget. There were endless opportunities for barter. I remember this big black American geezer who was in for fraud. I used to dish him up 2 extra portions of rice a day, and at the end of the week, he'd give me a half ounce of tobacco, which I would trade for phone cards or chocolate. It helped to make life more bearable. The other thing that makes life worth living is support from people on the outside. I got plenty of letters, and while it was great to get them, nothing could beat a visit from family and friends. If you got a good visit, and I made sure all mine were good ones, you went back to the wing with a spring in your step. I could always feel eyes on me in the visiting hall, the sideways glance that said, "Do you know who that is?" It's Jason Marriner, the one from the McIntyre program. I didn't mind, because it gave me a chance to show other people's visitors that I was human, despite what they had seen on the TV. The problem was that I couldn't pass up the chance for a piss take. If a geezer had a female visitor, I would go up to them and ask, "Is that your lovely lady?" "Yeah, this is her," the geezer would reply. "That's funny," I would say, "because the picture of the bird you've got on your cell wall doesn't look like her. She's got ginger hair. That's not the same bird at all." You could see the jaws dropping, and the kid would be pleading his innocence as his bird didn't know it was a wind-up. "Oh, drop me out, Jace," my mate would say. I'm not that cruel, so I would always tell her, "No, I'm only joking, sweetheart," before walking off laughing. As I said, support from the outside is so important. So I was touched by the generosity of the lads I'd got to know through football. I got so many letters, and quite a few times they sent me and Andy a couple of £100. And let me tell you, when you're on £15 a week in the nick that makes you a rich man, as well as many visits from friends in the south. One mate, Peter McBeath, came all the way down from Newcastle to see me. It's a long way, and what made it even harder was that he had to get there by 11:30 in the morning. But if we're talking about long distances, no one can touch my old mucker. Yes, I'm talking about Hickey, Steve Hickmott, who, of course, got 10 years after Operation Own Goal. But when the Court of Appeal threw out his conviction, he ended up with £96,000 in compensation. At the time, he was living in the Philippines, but he flew all the way over just to see me. He was wearing the same old combat jacket and jeans, and I soon discovered he was as funny as ever. "Why didn't you spend your compensation on some better gear?" I asked him. "Because I would rather spend it on whores with saws," he replied. He went on, "I've just flown 6,000 miles to see you. Don't they know me? Do they really not know who I am? I've just had to wait outside in a queue. What do you want? Special treatment?" "Yes, I deserve special treatment. I've had enough of these piss holes myself. Anyway, how are you, Jason?" After about a year in Wano, the screws could see that I'd played the game and was ready for a move to a CCAT Nick. So I got sent to Elmley in Kent, which I was told was a 23-hour bang-up. But when I got there, about 6:30 in the evening, people were playing table tennis or on the phone or just hanging about. In fact, bang-up was at 7:45. Not only that, there was hot water on tap, which meant I could make pot noodle or whatever. The food was also much better. There were proper chips and proper portions, and there was even a menu. Unbelievable. My only problem in Elmley was my high-profile status. I had eventually been able to get my dream job as gym orderly, which meant I could train during my free time. Thanks to all the exercise, I lost about 2 stones. I looked good and I felt good. Then, just when everything was going well, I got swagged off the gym job by the head of security. Security runs prisons and has the final say. The gym senior officer told me he was gutted for me and had tried to fight my corner, but I knew there was nothing he could do if his bosses had made up their minds. It was a liberty because the head of security didn't even know me. He was judging me by what he had heard, and he even told me to my face that it was because of my high profile. Later in my sentence, my profile also stopped me getting transferred to Blantyre House, which is a DCAT prison. By comparison, Wandsworth was a BCAT. I put in a request, but was told they'd changed the criteria so that no one convicted of football violence could go there. It wasn't funny, but you've just got to keep laughing at them. One screw asked me, "Why are you so happy all the time, Marriner?" "Well, why not Gov?" I told him. "I'm living, I'm breathing, I'm healthy, I'm sweet, and I'll get out eventually. Unlike you." "What do you want me to do?" "Walk around, feeling miserable every day." Even if they won't admit it to your face, that is exactly how most of them want you to be. But they were never going to see me like that. I'll tell you something else about prison. You always have the last laugh, even if you're doing life. When you pack up your gear on that final morning and walk through those gates, always hold your head up because that is you having the last laugh. However much it gets up their noses, there is nothing they can do. So make sure you enjoy the moment. After 9 months at Elmley, I went for my DCAT again. And this time, I got it. I was off to Stamford Hill, which, although it was literally across the road, was a million miles away in terms of how you were treated. The Kangas attitude was very much, if you want to fuck off, then fuck off, because no one's going to come looking for you. That's the old Bill's job, not ours. Even when I came out of reception, all I was given were directions to the wing, and there weren't even any screws to escort me. What made it even better was that I got a single cell for the first time since I'd been number 1 on the hot plate at 1-0. But even though I was now in a DCAT, it didn't stop the knockbacks. I tried to get into Latchmere House, an open prison and resettlement unit, but again I was rejected because of my high profile. When I went to my next nick, Spring Hill, near Aylesbury, it was an uphill battle to get the privileges I had earned by right. I had already been on a number of town visits from Stamford Hill, but when I went to the risk assessment board about a possible home visit, I got turned down because the World Cup finals in Japan and South Korea were on. Fuck me. I've done a bit of travelling in my time, but to go the Far East, watch a game, have a fight and fly back home, all within an 8-hour licence. What's more, I didn't even have a passport. The Cozzers had it. That's prison logic for you. Having said that, Spring Hill was a blinding nick. There were 24 to a hut, all within double cells. You had running hot water, your own sink and showers, and at the end of each hut there was a television room. The other people in there were the best I'd ever met in the nick, real good lads most of them, and we had so many great laughs. There were the likes of Lenny Hagland, Jay Usher, Dean Lingham, Simon Brown, Lola Hearn and Billy Whiteley. However, my battles with the system were nothing compared to the one I had been fighting since the day and hour I was sent down. I am talking about my appeal, which was, as required by law, lodged within 28 days of me being sentenced. Believe me, you never give up from that day on, and I bombarded my briefs with information I felt would be important in the appeal. It was partly because of the length of time it took to get a hearing in the Court of Criminal Appeal. To me, the powers that be took the piss, stringing the whole thing out for as long as possible, using excuses like files were missing. Let's finish off with the Wolves legend Gilly, as he talks about what prison was like for him. While I was arrested, there was a game against Sweden, which England lost. After the game, some of the local fans and the England boys clashed. It was broadcast on television, and it showed you some of the locals taking savage beatings. A few more English had been arrested. The next morning, I went to court and was remanded. I told my brothers and mates not to wait for me, and they left my stuff and went home. I was on a 23-hour lockup with 1 hour exercise on the roof, where you could only see the sky. I had plenty of money on me, but the food in there was wank. Thank God for the trolley that came round. The trolley used to stop outside the cells, which they would unlock, so that we could buy from it. It had food, snacks, and a well-known newspaper, which I would read. The other lads, who were locked up, wrote their firm's name on the top of the newspaper. There was the 657, the Baby Squad, Suicide Squad, Newcastle. I hadn't realised how many. This was how I met a good and loyal friend called Pot, who was from Burnley. We managed to get a cell next to each other, and they would open the door in the middle so we could chat and have exercise together. After a week, they would put little televisions in the cell, which had one English channel, and we would watch old movies or series like Minder. They were only 15 years behind, but still, it managed to pass the time away. I got myself a solicitor and told them that my missus was pregnant. I kept going to court, and they kept trying to do me for instigating a riot. They were trying to do Pot for the vicious kicking he gave to one of the Swedes outside the ground and for robbing his watch. We were in and out of court, and they kept saying I was from Spurs, and I kept telling them I was from Wolves. In the end, they deported me back to England after spending 30 days on remand. I said my goodbyes to Pot and told him I would stay in touch. The old Bill walked me to the plane, handcuffed like I was a terrorist, and off I went home. When I got back, I was on the front page of the local paper, and the headlines read, "Judge sends hooligan home because girlfriend's expecting." For the first couple of weeks, people kept taking the piss and asking me when it was due. So, okay, I told a little, teeny-weeny lie, but I was due a bit of luck. That was my first trip abroad with England, but me and the Burnley lad, Pot, stayed mates and have had many battles abroad with England, and you will read in this book about everyone since. I was the last one to be sentenced that day, so I was taken by a car with a screw to Dana Prison in Shrewsbury. Well, actually, it was a taxi that took us. Because it was late, they couldn't get hold of a prison service van, so I arrived in style. Well, a Vauxhall Cavalier anyway. Shrewsbury was just a holding prison, which was old and had just one main wing. It was a bit like Winston Green Prison in the terms that it was old and run down and full of convicts, and I didn't get any grief in there. My case had been in the papers, so a few people knew of me when I arrived. I even met a few Stoke lads in there who were as good as gold and helped me settle in. After 5 weeks, I was moved to Blakenhurst Prison, which was nearer to home, and in there, it was home from home. I knew loads of people, and the screws were okay. If you didn't bother them, they tended to leave you alone. I had regular visits from Debbie, who seemed to be coping well under the circumstances. She was a strong girl, but I really did miss her and the kids, and hated being away from them all. I was lying in my cell one night, listening to the Ireland versus England International being played at Lansdowne Road in Dublin. Now, anyone with an ounce of sense will tell you that whoever arranged this so-called international friendly must have need his or her brains tested. It came as no surprise to even the most ordinary, well-behaved football fan that doesn't get involved in any trouble in any shape or form that it was going to go off big style at this fixture. The two teams hadn't played one another for a good few years over in Ireland. A lot of English fans have connections with Scotland's Glasgow Rangers, who are a mainly Protestant-supported team, or I should say their support comes mainly from the Protestant communities, both in Scotland and Northern Ireland. On the other hand, their arch-rivals, Celtic, draw most of their fans from the Catholic side of things, in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Southern Ireland. So a lot of religious connotations were riding on this fixture, plus political parties from the rest of Britain, like the British National Party and Combat 18, were, according to the tabloid press, also seen out there stirring up trouble. Whether they were or weren't, it was going to go off no matter who or who wasn't there, from certain right-wing parties. This fixture was a recipe for disaster. It gave the hardcore hooligan element the opportunity to show in some way that by going to Dublin they weren't intimidated by the fact that the Irish Republican Army, who supposedly have a big Irish support, could over the years bomb and kill innocent people on the mainland. They were there to support their national side and were there as Englishmen who were going to stand up and be counted. At the game, it was ironic, but Ireland took the lead with a goal from our very own Wolves player, David Kelly. But that was the signal for the English fans in the seats in the upper stand to pelt the Irish fans down below them with anything they could lay their hands on. Bottles and glasses were thrown as seats were ripped up and used as missiles. It was a full-scale riot, not helped by fighting between some fans pitch side and the Irish Garda wading in with their truncheons and cracking anyone's skull within striking distance. No prisoners were taken as English blood was spilt that night. Revenge was short, sharp, and coloured red and sweet for some people. I pissed myself laughing as the game was, shock horror, abandoned. The radio commentator was near to tears as he described the scenes and spoke of how he was ashamed to be English. "Grow up, you cunt!" I shouted at the radio. What did anyone honestly expect? The English and Irish fans to stand side by side with no hint of aggro. If anyone's to blame, it's the pricks that arranged the fixture. Do they not watch the news on TV or read the papers? Who are the fucking morons in this instance? Just along the landing from me in another cell, listening to the game was a fellow Wolves fan and top criminal, one-eyed, dodgy Sean Milner. He was in for dodgy money. He'd been caught in South Wales and had been sentenced to 28 days inside and was sharing a cell with one of the many smackheads in there. I'm released after doing 6 months of my 9-month sentence. Plus, I end up doing another 3 months for further charges. I get back home and keep my head down and out of trouble and try to bring a few bob into the house. Go out and get the book from Gillys called Running with a Pack of Wolves. If you would like to hear more of his excellent stories, again, it's another highly recommended book. I will leave a link in the description if you wish to buy it. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. You can now find our official page on Facebook. Just type in Everything Casual and our page should pop up. Feel free to message me on there if you have any good away day stories you would like featured in upcoming episodes, or you know of any football lads that have a good story to tell. If you're into original content, football casual stories like this, then click like and subscribe. That way you will be notified when we put out a new original story, which is usually twice a week. See you next time.